Hello, and welcome to Sembang St. Paul from St. Paul's Anglican Church in Petaling Jaya, Malaysia. In this program, we hear casual conversations by Christians about how our faith connects with how we live. For this episode, we will discuss the miracle of the loaves and fishes. My name is Dr. Darren Ong. And as usual, I am your host for today. And our guests are John and
Hello.
Rani. So John, say hello.
Hello.
Okay, Rani.
Hello, hello everyone.
Okay, so thank you for agreeing to join us for today's episode. The miracle of the loaves and fishes is a very famous and a very important miracle of Jesus. And the story of this miracle is told multiple times in the Bible. In fact, other than the resurrection, it is the only miracle that Jesus did that is recorded in all four of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So let's read the version from the Gospel of John, chapter 6. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now, the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place. So they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, and also the fish, as many as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." So this is a very compelling miracle, a very wonderful one, where not having enough to eat, they end up having just from 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, enough to feed 5,000 with so much left over. But it seems like a miracle that is important because all 4 Gospels record it. But why is it important? So this is the first question I will pose to our panelists. What lessons are Christians supposed to learn from this miracle of the loaves and fishes? Let's invite John to give an answer to that. Over to you, John.
Yeah. Okay, so when I first got this question, the first thing that came to my mind was that this story is showing us how our God is a God who provides. He was able to provide food for more than 5,000 people from just 5 loaves and 2 fishes. So I think that we have to have faith and trust that God will provide for all our needs. One more thing that we have to do is to seek him and find him and ask him whenever we are in times of distress or when we need help in general. Like in this story, the boy came up Jesus got the food from the boy, whatever little food that boy had, which was the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and he brought it to Jesus. And just like that, we shall seek God and ask Him to help us to provide for our needs. God knows our needs, and He will provide for us at the right place and at the right time. And in fact, I think we all know that God knows our needs better than we know our own needs. So just have faith and trust that He will provide for you whenever you need Him. Yeah, I think that's what I think.
Okay, thank you, John. That is a wonderful answer. And it is something that's very important to Christians, the idea that God is a God who provides. So, Rani, could we have your perspective on the question? What do you think is the message behind this miracle of the loaves and fishes? What are we to learn from it?
Okay, thank you. From this miracle of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, we see, firstly, the deep concern and compassion and love Jesus had for the multitudes who followed Him because He had performed miraculous healing on the sick earlier in John chapter 6, verse 2. Secondly, in verse 6, we see the divine nature in Him working out a plan to feed them. And yet he asks of his disciples whether they should buy bread to feed them. This shows an act of humility on Jesus' part to include his disciples' suggestion to take the 5 loaves and 2 fish from a small boy in the crowd to feed the multitudes. Thirdly, we see Jesus taking the bread and fish and giving thanks to his Father in heaven, an act of reverence and honor to our Creator God, an important and essential lesson that as Christians we ought to follow. Fourthly, as he breaks the bread and the fish and distributed to the multitudes seated on the grassy ground in groups of 50, we see an amazing miracle of multiplying before the very eyes of the disciples, the multitudes, and even the little boy who gave up his bread and fish. Isn't this the work of God, our Creator, in whom nothing is too hard, nothing is too difficult? The disciples even picked up 12 baskets of leftovers so that nothing is wasted as Jesus instructs, a lesson we all ought to learn. And lastly, Jesus, Son of Man, reveals his divinity as the Son of God in this incredible act, a miraculous act that confirms his lordship on earth. For Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him. The Bible reading on John chapter 14, verse 6. As Christians, let us acknowledge this truth and be blessed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rani. Thank you, both of you, for your answers. And there are so many really important truths that are revealed through this miracle. And yeah, it's one of the first things that people think of when we're asked to think about a miracle of Jesus. And one of the things that both of you mentioned is this truth about God's providence, that he knows what we need, even if we ourselves don't know, and that he is able and willing to provide it because of his great love for us. So, and he provides whatever needs we have, and whether it's material needs or spiritual needs. All good things come from God. Everything that we need ultimately comes from God. And if we have faith, if we have this faith in God's providence, it is a faith that's very freeing, because very often we find ourselves trapped by the constant anxieties of life. We worry that we don't have what we want and what we need. And if we really have that faith in God, that's a lot of liberty from a lot of the stresses and a lot of the anxieties of the world. So for this next question, I was wondering if both of you could share about a time when God provided something you needed in an unexpected way. Since John answered first last time, I would like to invite Rani to go first this time.
Thank you. I was a Penangite. My hometown is Penang. But in the year 2001, I came to Petaling Jaya to visit my sister-in-law and family. And by God's grace, I was offered a job in Kuala Lumpur as a teacher in an institute called Applied Scholastics to coach students individually. As I wanted to have a job and continue on my whatever I'm able to do in Kuala Lumpur, I took the offer. And at the same time, I didn't want to travel from PJ, and I wanted a simple single-story landed property in Kuala Lumpur. God unexpectedly opened doors and fulfilled my desire. It came very suddenly, and I was able to possess what I wanted. I praise and thank God for his wonderful grace, mercy, and favor. All glory and honor to God, our loving Father, who is indeed awesome in fulfilling the desires of our heart if we ask him. I cannot comprehend the love and favor and mercy and grace that he showed me. Thank you, dear Lord. Thank you, Darren, for hearing me.
Okay, thank you, Rani. And it's wonderful that you were able to receive what God had for you at the time when it was needed. And that's something that we all have to do. And even when it comes after a time of waiting, very often the things we want come after a time of waiting. And then we, as happened to you, we get it when we least expect, because things that God does happens under his timing, not ours, his control, not ours. So that's a wonderful lesson. So John, same question to you. Could you share about the time when God provided something that you needed in an unexpected way?
Yeah. So in the story of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, God provided food. But like Darren said just now, God's provision is not just in materialistic things. I think the story of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes is just symbolic, and God can provide for us in every aspect of our lives. He will provide for us accordingly and at the perfect time and moment. In my case, God provided help when I needed help. When I was 7 years old, I think, if I'm not mistaken, when I was 7 years old, we went for a family trip to Penang. We were at the beach, and at that time, my dad was in the hotel room. My mom, my sister, and I were at the beach playing in the ocean. So at 7, I was very hyped to be in the waters, and I was very excited, basically. So I was actually quite deep into the ocean, but still okay. I think my mom was with me that time. And then when the water started becoming a bit rough, my mom, I think it probably went like this. My mom would have asked me to get out, but I probably didn't. And then my sister had already gone out that time. She was nearer the shore. My mom also was a bit nearer to the shore. And I don't think it was really that deep where I was, but out of the blue, like suddenly the waves just started becoming rougher and rougher and rougher. And I was beginning to be under the water. My mom started panicking. I was mind blank. Like when it happened, I was so I started to panic, obviously, and then like during that time, I was totally blanked out. I was panicking. My mom was there watching everything, and she was probably screaming. But out of the blue, like two men dashed into the ocean. I have to make this sound a bit dramatic, but two men dashed straight into the ocean and pulled me out. I really thought that I was going to drown. I think my mom would have probably thought the same thing too. But yeah, by God's grace, these two men from out of nowhere just came and carried me out of the ocean at the right time and at the right moment. The next morning, okay, so after that, we went back to the hotel and everything was okay, thankfully. And the next morning, my mom went to look for them. So my mom went down to the beach to look for these two guys because she wanted to reward them and thank them again because they practically saved my life. And when my mom went to look for them, they were nowhere in sight. My mom couldn't find them. And it seemed like they were two angels sent by God at the right place and at the right time. And I believe that God is a God that always watches over us. And I just want to end by saying this psalm from Psalm 121. It says that I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is the shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. And yeah, that's about my story.
That's a wonderful note to end on, John, and that's a really great story. And there might have been angels, you never know, right? Like that's God can work through human beings. He can also just send angels. He works in many ways, and yeah, that's another way. And I think that's right what you said. It's not literally about having food. You know, God provides in every way, whether it comes from safety or security, whether it comes from comfort. You know, that whatever He needs, you know, the God will provide. And you know, we look to Him, and we don't try to find that security. We don't try to find that sustenance from anywhere else. And I think that's a wonderful lesson that you learn from that episode in the beach. Okay, that's really wonderful reflections from both of you. Thank you again for sharing. I'm going to end with my usual advertisements on this. So once more, this is Sembang St. Paul. This show is Sembang St. Paul, and it is a production from St. Paul's Anglican Church in Petaling Jaya. So this is our priest, which is actually John's father. And if you want to learn more about us, you can check out this website. It's just stpaulpj.org.my. You can find more about us, our services, when are they, ministries. You can contact us if you want to ask questions. We also have a Facebook page, Here It Appears. You can find us on Facebook as well to catch up on our activities. Yeah, and if you want to learn more about this Jesus who can feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, of this God who can provide for every need that you have, then you're welcome to join us, seek to encounter who this Jesus is. And yeah, knowing Jesus, knowing God is something that is life-changing, and it is something that will meet those needs that that always give you anxiety, that those unmet needs that always give you worry, always cause you to be afraid. So thanks again, and we'll end with this prayer from the 6th Sunday after Epiphany. So I'll just say this prayer since praying together on Zoom is a bit messy. So I'll just do it myself, and you guys can pray with me in silence. O God, whose blessed Son was manifested that he might destroy the works of the devil and make us the sons of God and heirs of eternal life. Grant us, we beseech thee, that having this hope, we may purify ourselves, even as he is pure, that when he shall appear again with power and great glory, we may be made like unto him in his eternal and glorious kingdom, where with thee, O Father, and thee, O Holy Ghost, he liveth and reigneth, ever one God, world without end. Amen. Okay, and that's it for our episode of Sembang St. Paul. John, would you like to say goodbye to our viewers?
Yep. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Rani, would you like to say goodbye
Yes.
to our viewers?
Thank you for watching, and thank you, Darren, for inviting me. This is my first, first Zoom meeting in such a thing like this. But nevertheless, I thank God for the courage to accept your offer, and it has been nice. Thank you so much. God bless all of you.
Thank you once again to our panelists, John and Rani, and thank you to you, our viewers. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.